What I want to share with you today, and it's a really short period of time, a couple of hours I have here, about 2 hours, and I want to give you some really powerful distinctions here, some tools that you could start using immediately in your businesses, in your online business, and your offline business for that matter. But see, I'm not an online guy. That's not my area of expertise. About 6 months ago, my website was so awful that I was embarrassed to even click on it myself. Like I would get this gut-wrenching feeling. I don't know if you ever felt it. It was so awful. So I started shopping around for people that would help me redesign my website. And I went to about 3 or 4 different people, and I noticed something very, very strange was happening. Is they all kept saying, well, I'm partners with Frank Kern. Or they kept saying, Frank Kern's name kept coming up. And of course, I said, they don't know this guy, Frank Kern. Everyone from London, from this place, everyone knew Frank Kern. And I never had heard of Frank before, because I don't come from this world. And about 4 or 5 months later, through a couple of other, coincidences, so to speak, I ended up meeting Frank. And as soon as the two of us met, it was like, boom. It was a connection because, in a sense, Frank is sort of this, world-renowned internet marketing guru/legend. And he is. He's almost the father of internet marketing. And on my side, I'm in the other side of the business world, which is offline, probably one of the top people in the art of influence and persuasion. So Frank is marketing and I'm persuasion. And the persuasion side of it is really what happens after the marketing is done. In other words, you can be the greatest marketer in the world, but if you literally can't fucking close. But is it okay if I know Frank, I'll curse a couple of times. I'm from New York and I worked on Wall Street, right? So I let out the F-bomb once in a while. It's okay, right? Yeah. Yes? Louder, yes? Yes? Awesome. If not, fuck off, because you already paid your money, right? So when Frank asked me to come speak here, I was like, okay, fabulous. I was just getting off a tour. I was on tour for about the last 5 weeks. I was in Australia, I was in Asia, Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, New Zealand, did the whole 9 yards. I was away from my family for 5 weeks. Not a great thing, but it was a really successful tour. When I came here, I said to Frank, listen, I've been on tour and I've been speaking to people who are mostly budding entrepreneurs, people that want to get into business for themselves. It wasn't an online tour. I said, and I was here the first day, and I think pretty much all of you are entrepreneurs. Raise your hand if you're an entrepreneur here. You can so. Everyone, right? Is anybody here, don't feel embarrassed, I'll throw an egg at you. Is anybody here that's not an entrepreneur? No, right, so you're all entrepreneurs, right? Of course, we have entrepreneurs and we have fucking entrepreneurs. There's a difference, right? You have like sort of dabblers and you have masters or experts, like Brendan was talking about. But the bottom line is this. As I said to Frank, I said, tell me, I want to serve your people at the highest level I possibly can. Because who's read the book, by the way? How many? A lot of people. Okay. So I have a lot of experience in business, all right, starting from a very young age. And I built one of the largest brokerage firms in America, was making $50 million a year, not in profit for myself, when I was 26 years old. Okay, had private jets, had the whole thing, yachts, sunk a yacht or two, kind of screwed up a bit, did a couple of drugs, just a couple, right? I should look like Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones, right? But anyway, I said to Frank, tell me, I said, what is it, through everything that I know? I said, give me the top 3 reasons, the top 3 things that hold your people back from achieving massive wealth and success. And it took him about 4 seconds to give me the first one. And I'll tell you what they are. I'm going to write it down for you. Number 1, or number 3 actually, because the third reason, was overwhelm. And I was surprised when he said it. He goes, it's overwhelming. He goes, there's so much info out there. There's so much opportunity out there. There's so many different things you need to be competent at that people tend to just say, shit, what do I do first? And they get overwhelmed, so they do nothing. They wait around for the perfect plan. They wait for the perfect product, for the perfect partnership or joint venture, the perfect month to launch, whatever it might be. But they fall into this level of overwhelm. And once you're in that state, that's a state of mind, emotional, physiological state, it's very difficult to do anything well. You could be the best entrepreneur in the world, but if you're in a state of overwhelm, you can't do much entrepreneurship. If you're a great parent and you're in a state of overwhelm, you can't be a great parent to your children. So when you're in that terrible state, nothing good happens. So that was the first thing that Frank said. They are overwhelmed with the magnitude of information, so they don't take action. Very important. The second thing he said to me was, so many of these people, they just don't have a powerful enough why. your why. And that really means, and just so you know, who here knows a little bit about self-development? Raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Louder, please. Aye. Thanks. Because after lunch, I want to keep some energy going here. So we all know what finding your why is. I don't want to make this some bullshit cliche session here about self-development, because we've all done that stuff, and some of it's really powerful, but a lot of times it doesn't really work. It doesn't take. For some reason, we don't actually get it and go to the highest level where we can internalize it and make it real in our lives. So what Frank was saying to me was that a lot of they want to make money, they want to be wealthy, they want to do the right thing, they want to give massive value, but they don't really understand at the higher level what their vision is for their own world, for the people that they love, not just themselves, for the people that they love, the people that they care about. They don't know why they're really doing it. That was the second reason. And the first one, which is the most compelling of all, and what it just so happens I am probably the world's foremost expert in, is Frank said, most of the people, no offense, he said in an avuncular, nice way, he goes, a lot of these people, and I'm going to use Frank's exact words, they cannot sell their way out of a paper bag. Sell their way out of a paper bag, meaning they're not closers. And because of that, and because they lack this, which is the most crucial distinction in success, bar none. Bar none is the ability to close the deal. Because of that, what happens is this. In your heart of hearts, we're all, all of us, we're all very smart, and our brains are constantly working and figuring shit out, right? So your brain is saying to you, I know I don't really have this stuff down, so I'm probably not going to succeed anyway. So you end up not taking action. See, I have a theory that goes as follows. Most people say, well, people don't take action because they have a fear of failure, right? I think, yes, that's true to some extent, but even more important is that people don't take action because they don't truly believe they're going to succeed. And because the brain is so intelligent and works so quickly, you run a movie out, you're down a year, you say, not really going to work, not worth it, I'm not doing all the work, I'm not taking the risk, I don't want to look foolish, and you get all the negatives start pouring in, and that overwhelming positive is that if I did it and really it worked, boom, you would do it. To that end, I want to ask everyone a question. I want you to answer honestly, okay? I want you to raise your hand. Here's the scenario. Ready? The scenario is as follows. If I said to you right now that I had a business for you, it's a business in a box, okay? And if you take this business in a box, it's going to cost you $20,000, okay? But I'll give it to you for free. It's going to require massive effort and work for 24 months. You have to work your ass off harder than you've ever worked in your entire life for 24 months. But I promise you, I guarantee you, that for the rest of your life, there's a 100% guarantee you will make a minimum of $3 million a year. Who would be willing to put in 2 years of hard work for $3 million a year? Raise your hand. Okay, if your hand's not up, you're insane, okay? You might take a bathroom break right now, in fact, because I can't help you, okay? So everyone's got, okay, now, fair enough. Basically, the whole room raised their hands, right? Now let me run another scenario. Let's say I said to you the same thing, 2 years of really hard work, small investment of money, but it's a 50-50 shot that you would be successful. You might make a couple million a year, you might make nothing. Who would do it? They're 50-50 shot. Okay, they're already doing it. Excellent point. I love this man. Who is it? Give this guy. So anyway, so now about 3/4 of the room raised their hand. If I said there was a 10% shot that you could make $2 million a year, who would raise their hand? Raise your hand. Okay, about 30%. How about a 2% chance? A few people. 1% chance? Just the serial risk takers here. People, I love you people, okay? So here's the point. When I said there was a guarantee that you'd be able to make money if you worked really hard for 2 years and took a step-by-step process, I'm on board. When the numbers drop below 20 or 30%, the hands start going down. And in reality, according to some social pressure here, we all raise our hands a bit more than we really would. So my guess is in the real world, the numbers will be slightly lower. So the idea is, and what Frank was saying to me in short, was that most of the people that I deal with, they lack this skill. They're not closers, they're not influencers, they're not salespeople. And I have to tell you this, some people think sales is a dirty word. Selling is everything in life. Either you're selling, meaning you're influencing, persuading, or you're failing. Either you're selling someone on that your ideas and concepts make sense, your products make sense. You're selling your kids to make their better, do their homework. Doesn't matter what line of work you're in with your children, your spouse. You're always influencing and conveying your thoughts, your concepts, and trying to do it in a way that connects with another human being and empowers them, but also gets you what you want in life too. That's what influencing is all about. And without that skill, and I know that Frank is right, because I do this for a living. I travel all over the world, and I will tell you that you might have heard this from other places, that there's a force inside of you, and once you unleash that force, you can accomplish anything in life. It's a cliche. It's a cliche. But here's the deal. There actually is a force, and the way you wake it up is by influencing one person first, and who's that? You have to convince yourself that you are the shit, that you have everything it takes to achieve massive wealth and success. And if you don't have one specific skill set here, if you lack a specific skill, you fucking go out and get it. You perfect it. There are two types of people in the world. I'll tell you exactly who they are. I have 4 boards up here for a reason. We'll get to that. I'm going to give you tons of content today. If I go over, Frank, I'll take the hook. Just take the hook, Frank, if I go over, okay? So there's 2 types of people. You have people on one side who have reasons. And there are some people in this room that are reason people. They'll tell you all the fucking reasons why they can't become successful, why they can't get what they want in life. There are those people in this room. If I give you the greatest idea in the world, the greatest opportunity, you'll say, well, I got to travel somewhere, or it's going to cost me some money to lay out, or then I have to drop what I'm doing now, or put an extra 3 hours with, neglect my kids. I'll give you an example. I was getting a massage. I stayed, you know the Del Coronado Hotel? Right? The beautiful hotel. And I went there. It was my 2-year anniversary with the woman who I'm going to marry this year. Grace, she's in the back. Ann. Say, hi, Ann. Okay? So we're there. We're celebrating our anniversary. So we're getting massages. Okay? I'm getting a massage, and of course she starts to ask me questions. You know, what do you do? So I told her what I do. She says, oh my God, I'm an entrepreneur. And she tells me some detailed story about how she has this business where she takes these shirts, and they're healing shirts. She puts like stones on them or something, right? And they go for your chakras, like the 7 or 10 chakras, whatever it might be. I'm not an expert in this stuff. She's telling me the whole thing. The whole thing. Like, wow, good. Sounds really good. Whole thing, right? I said, so how many shirts are you selling? Oh, none. No, I'm not selling any yet. I'm like, well, why not? She says, well, I really don't like to sell. I'm like, you know, I said, okay. I said, so what do you do? She's like, I got all these shirts made, and they're in my house, and it's really unbelievable. I have a website I'm launching. I'm like, what, right? I said, she goes, but I have someone who can sell. They're a real estate person, but they're busy right now. They're going to stop their real estate soon. And what I heard, now just to cut it short, for 10 minutes, I heard all the freaking reasons why she couldn't actually go out and start the business. She didn't say, when she said I couldn't sell, it's not, she goes, I'm just not a salesperson. I'm not like that. That's a load of crap. That's a loser's mentality. Sales, influence, persuasion, it's an entirely learnable skill. And in case you haven't noticed, Frank is a fucking master closer. He's a follow-through guy that just gets shit done. And he's got the vision too. So I was closed by these guys like that. I see people when I'm out and they ask me all these questions. They want to do business with me. 95% never even ask me to do business. They do everything but, because they're not closers. It's the single most important skill in your life you can ever master. You have marketing on one side, and on the other side you have sales, influence, let's call it persuasion. One without the other, and you're knocking your head against the wall, and you're saying, what the hell? Why am I not getting the result? You could have the best marketing out there, but if you can't sell anything, you got a problem. There's no close in what you're putting out into the world. People just don't buy. A couple will, not many. Conversely, with sales, you can actually, in the absence of any marketing, still make money as sales. It's just really fucking hard. You got to bang your head against the wall. You got to bang on doors. You got to constantly cold call. Everything is cold, right? The idea, though, is to go hand in hand, to have a kick-ass marketing program, which Frank has given you, and it's unbelievable. I went through it, and it's ridiculous. and to be able to actually take that and fucking close. If you have both of those distinctions, then you will absolutely soar to success. Not just in your financial life, in your personal life, in your relationships with other people. It's ridiculous. So when I made this decision to stop what I was doing, okay, or wind it down tremendously, I was going to be on tour all year, all over the place. I was going right back, to Australia, then back to Asia, South America, and I cut it down because I said, you know what? With Frank and Trey, with their expertise and mine in my area, how could we possibly lose? It's the most important question that you have to ask yourself when you take an action. What's the worst that can possibly happen? And it's also what you have to remember that's on the mind of every person you're trying to influence. What is the worst that can possibly happen? We're fear-based creatures. Just understand that and accept it. Human beings are fear-based creatures. It's wired into our reptilian brain. We'll always have this downside movie we're playing. When you're trying to influence somebody, not only do you have to create the massive upside and show the value, you also have to eliminate the downside risk too, or minimize it, mitigate it. So when they run the parallel movies, boom, logically and importantly, emotionally, it makes sense to close. Makes sense to everybody? Yes? Yes. Excellent. So here's the deal. So today, what I want to really focus on here is persuasion. Persuasion. We'll touch a little bit on marketing here, but you guys get that at a very high level from Frank, Brent, people like Brendan. So I'm going to focus on persuasion and give you as much as I can in a very short period of time. Now, I'm going to be holding a longer seminar here in September, okay? And I hope I see a bunch of you there, the people that want results versus that have reasons. But for right now, I want to give you something that you can use instantly, like in your business, like starting Monday or Tuesday, because it's Memorial Day, right? So Tuesday, and you could start making massive gains in what you're doing. So here's the deal. In order to achieve mastery in business and in life, especially with money and success, you need to understand this, that you have two worlds that you need to operate in. You need to operate, firstly, in the inner world, which is what goes on right between your ears, right here, the inner game of wealth and success. And I want to talk about it in terms of persuasion. I said before, the first person you have to persuade is who? Yourself, right? Fair enough. Now, there are certain basic concepts that you've probably heard before in terms of the importance of being able to manage your state. Raise your hand if you've heard that before. State management, important, right? Okay, this goes back, state management, to the beginning of time. Before Gladiators, in the movie The Gladiator, he bends down and he picks up some dirt and starts rubbing it in his hands and gets himself into a state for war, to get ready to fight. Every time in that movie he has an anchor he's firing off. He puts dirt in his hands. Indians would put war paint on their face to get themselves into an emotionally charged state. So I didn't invent state management here. What I'm telling you is this. It's fucking crucial to be able to trigger the right state in the right moment for influence, persuasion / sales. There are 3 states that you need to trigger when you want them. Not always, but in the key moments when it really matters. When you pick up the phone, when you get that first moment face-to-face, you have to be in the right state. So I'm going to show you some ways to do that and what those states are. Next is your beliefs. Also, something, of course, we've heard before. Basically that, we are the sum of our beliefs about what the world is, how we operate in the world. And I look at beliefs like this. We have, of course, the empowering beliefs that lead us to wealth and success. And we have the disempowering beliefs that lead us to poverty, misery, and failure. We all have limiting beliefs which hurt us. And in the end of the day, you're always held down by your lowest level limiting belief. It's the one that's at the bottom that stops you. Imagine a Ferrari. You have a Ferrari. It's a beautiful, like Frank's beautiful, was a red Ferrari, right, Frank? It's a beautiful red Ferrari, right? So it has this beautiful chassis, this 455 horsepower engine, 12 cylinders, 4 valves per, capable of 300 miles an hour. Who knows how many miles an hour it can go, right? But if there's a governor on the engine stopping the flow of gas, it's not going over 55. That's what a limiting belief does for you, or does to you. It stops you from charging forward when you should and causes you to slide backwards and move backwards when you shouldn't. There are 3 core beliefs, 3 of them, that you need to have as an entrepreneur. If you have the opposite, which would be the limiting form of that belief, you're fucked. No offense, you just are. Because you will end up charging away when you should plow forward, and you won't move forward when you should. You'll sit there in a box and say, what the hell? You'll be nervous, and I'll get to that, what those beliefs are. I don't have time for all of them. I'll get to at least one of them and show you how to break it right here in this room. So that's our beliefs. Next, we have what's called your thermostat, or your standards in life. Thermostat or your standards. And your standards, who's heard of this? Raise your hand if you heard of it. Say aye. Great. Very basic concept here, but what I want to do now is take these things to a new level and apply them directly for persuasion. How you use this shit to actually become the best persuader you can possibly be. So we have this issue of standards, your thermostat, where it is that you feel comfortable in life, especially financially. Everybody has a different level. Me, it's very, very high. As you know from my book, if I'm not making 8, 10 million a year, I'm saying I'm fucking not, I'm desperate what I do. I'm running 1,000 miles an hour to get to that $10 million a year mark. That's it. Other people say, what are you, crazy? If I had $500,000 a year, I'd be thrilled. So what your standards are, essentially, are the things that you must have in life. So financial standard would be a certain amount of money. An emotional standard might be a certain amount of peace in your life, a relationship with another person, whatever it might be. And there are people with, again, high standards and people with very low standards. The beauty of this room is the fact that you're sitting here means that you already have your standards at almost, if not the highest level. So typically it's not what's holding people in this room back. Other rooms, different. You have high standards. What's holding you back from getting what you want in life is other things. But we're going to hit on standards anyway because I want you to understand the power of it and to make sure that if you ever see yourself sliding back down and dropping your standards for any reason at all, how devastating that could be to you going forward. Because here's what happens. We have a thermostat, right, and it's set for a certain amount of money. Let's say it's for $1 million a year. And if you go on for a long time and that's your thermostat, 1 million, but you can't hit it. Because let's say you're missing something on the you're the worst, as Frank said, you can't sell your way out of a paper bag, so you can't get to this point. After a while, your brain starts saying, fuck this just hurts too much, and you lower your standards. You say, I'll be happy with making $200,000 a year. So you lower your standards, and all of a sudden, if that doesn't work, you lower them again and again, and before you know it, you're operating like one of these people who's no longer an entrepreneur, but's ready to go work for a fucking paycheck for $40,000 a year and work 40 hours a week, which is fucking insanity to me. That's the danger of dipping your standards even a little bit, because you never know when disaster is going to strike. This shit happens in life, right? You're walking along the street, bam, you get hit between the eyes with a lump of shit, right? It just happens. And if you're one of those people that's going to say, fuck it, I might as well just settle for less, you're done. So you have your standards. Next thing, and the last thing on the inner world I want to focus on here is actually focus. And when Frank is focused on overwhelm as being the number 3 reason, okay, what I want to show you and share with you in terms of a strategy and through stories and metaphors, which are very powerful, is the power of having a laser-guided focus on where it is you want to go versus what it is you're afraid of in life. Focusing on where you want to go versus what you're afraid of. Because you end up going where you focus. So many people, it's called living in the problem versus the solution. So we're going to go into that in intimate detail. Now, let's go to the outer world. That's all what happens right here. Now, when I give a seminar, like a real 3-day seminar, I cover all this in a half a day. This is not like a long, drawn-out process. Boom, boom, boom. We do it ninja style on steroids to show you what you need to be practical in the real world. I spend 2.5 days on the outer world of success. Okay? And these are actually your strategies for influence, sales, and persuasion. Okay, and this is actually it's the outer world, okay? Put it on top. And in the outer world, you have sales / persuasion, influence, right? You have marketing, which is offline and online. Both, by the way, if you can't just be an online marketer without paying any attention to the real world, what's going on outside the internet, right? And lastly, I want to talk about entrepreneurship. These are actually the skills and the strategies that you need to leverage from being a single-man shop doing everything yourself or working with just one or two other assistants and outsourcing? How do you actually take what you have once it starts to work and literally hit it out of the park? And lastly, and I don't have time for it today, one thing I do talk about also is something called MSIs, and these are multiple streams of income. After you become wealthy, this is part of an overall formula for big wealth, not just a few, but for 10, 20, 30, $50 million, is that once you start making money in your core business on the internet, you want to then start diversifying and leveraging in real estate and other multiple streams of income. So we'll get to that. If I can touch on it, if I have time for it, we'll see. So those are the goals for today. And rather than telling this to you in a very dry way, informationally, I'm going to give you the lessons by telling you the story of my life. And but I'm going to tell the story of my life in a very specific way. So the lessons are there, and I'll point them out as we move along, and I'll save some good ones for when we sum it all up at the end. So the bottom line is this. You've read my book. You know I've had pretty much the most insane life on the planet, right? Yeah, yes. You got it. I know. Still alive, right? Which is a miracle unto itself, by the way. Okay? And I'm sober for 13 years, believe it or not. Okay? So let me start from the beginning. And I was basically a born entrepreneur from the time I emerged from my mother's womb. At the age of 8, I had my first business. It was a paper route. And I was literally knocking on doors, expanding my paper route. Now, when I do an entrepreneurship seminar, not for internet marketers, I tell a story about, how I was overcoming fear and knocking on doors and whatnot. And I talk about how I ended up expanding it and selling the business. But I want to focus on something a little bit different here. What really carved my niche in the paper route business at the age of 8 was something that my next door neighbor, who was an older guy, 40 years, a man, my friend's father, he gave me a piece of advice. And he said to me, if you're knocking on doors, here's what you got to do. He goes, follow around the other paper boy who's delivering the competing paper and knock on every door that he drops a paper at. This was what the man said to me. He goes, because if they're buying the Newsday, they'll also buy the New York Post. So the idea of don't sell shit to people, don't buy this sort of stuff, right? I was like, okay, great. And I started doing that, and I exploded my paper route. It was my first mentor at the age of 8. It was pretty cool. And I did amazingly well at this paper route, and I sold it at the age of 10, made my first big fortune of $35 at the age of 10. Cashed out, okay? Because my mom was getting pissed at me because I was so obsessed with knocking on doors. I wanted to keep making more money, right? Next thing I did at the age of 10, I started shoveling driveways after snowstorms. I grew up in New York. Anyone from New York here, by the way? Any New York? Bunch of them. Awesome. Round of New York's around applause. Right? Who's California? Anybody? More California. I'm from both, okay? I'm now living in California. I grew up in New York. So anyway, after a snowstorm, I go out with a shovel, and I grew up in a poor neighborhood. I grew up to a wealthy neighborhood about a quarter mile away. I walked out with my shovel, and I'd shovel, knock on doors again, $20 per driveway. I'd make $100 on a snowy day. I did amazing for like 2.5 years, and then fucking Al Gore, before he invented the internet, he also invented global warming, and that fucked me up too, right? All of a sudden, it didn't snow for like 2 years because of Al Gore, right? So he was young, but it's Al Gore's fault, right? So no snow, I was out of business, right? So I said, well, okay, I can't do that anymore. I was watching TV, and I saw a magic show on TV. I became obsessed with becoming a magician. So here's what I did. I went out. I didn't actually become a magician. Not first. I put an ad in the Penny Saver for $25, saying $25 children's parties, the amazing Belford. I didn't even know how to do magic tricks yet. But I went out there, and I had my mother she made me like a hat, like one of those things, like a Harry Potter hat, right? And I got a cape and the whole thing, right? I put this, and the phone started ringing off the hook. Now I had to learn magic. Remember what Frank said, just fucking do it? That's what he was talking about. So I actually went out and did this, and then my father's like, I'll go get you some magic tricks. And I learned magic afterwards. But what I did is something very powerful, acting as if. Now, if you saw the movie Boiler Room, the guy worked for me. He, was lightly based on my firm. Okay, it was kind of a fun movie in some ways. But when Ben Affleck was saying, act as if, right? That's my lines from my thing. And I didn't invent those either, but I was using them back in the 80s. And I'd say, act as if you're a wealthy man, rich already, and you will become wealthy. Act as if you have unmatched confidence, and you will become confident. Act as if you have all the answers, and the answers will come to you. I want you to act as if. I told my guys, who are mostly in their teens and early 20s, thousands of salesmen, I would say act as if, because you generate the emotion that way, you get yourself into the right state that way, and when you're in the right state, you can access your resources. See, if you're in a state of overwhelm, which was the #1 killer that Frank talked about, if you're overwhelmed right now, everything else that you have, every talent you have, every experience, every resource, you can't access it. So the idea is by acting as if, was getting yourself into this resourceful state so you can then do what you do best. So I did that with magic, and I started, I learned how to do a few tricks, and I was successful. Did it for 2 or 3 years, a bunch of kids' pies. I could still make balloon animals and stuff. In fact, Pam, who you met yesterday, how great was Pam, by the way? You have Pam around? Pam, in fact, has changed my life because she's starting tomorrow, is it the day after tomorrow, she's working for me full-time. She worked for Tony for 18 years, and now she's working for me, and it's a gift for me because, my business is growing so fast, and I was nervous because, it's out of control since I didn't have someone that really can help me develop all this stuff into products, and Pam came along at the right time. It's unbelievable. So Pam's like my secret weapon. Well, it's really, I look at her as my partner, too. She's just amazing, as is her husband, Chris, who's back there. So anyway, I go there acting as if, right? So now I do this for a couple of years, make some decent money, and then I have my first big hit when I'm 16 years old. And what it is this. I go down to the beach one day. You New Yorkers know Jones Beach, right? It's a huge beach with thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people. And I'm down there one day, and it's 92 degrees, really humid, and people are bitching and moaning as they're walking up to the concession stand, which is really far away. You got to take like a half-a-mile walk up to the boardwalk, right? So I'm like, fuck. I said, what if I just brought down some Italian ices and chipwitches and some stuff right down to the water's edge? I'd make a fortune, right? Next night I went home, and Yellow Pages back then, that's what it was, and I found an ice cream distributor. I go down with my car, don't know a thing about this. I buy a styrofoam cooler, and I load up with Italian ices, chipwitches, fudgicles, Milky Ways, and Snickers. Put a slab of dry ice above it. I go down to the beach, and in 1 hour, I sold out my cooler, and I made $100 in 1 hour. My friends back then, I think minimum was like $1.35 an hour. I made $100 in an hour. So the next day, what did I do? Well, I already, for some reason, and I'll tell you where I think I got it later, I had some pretty high standards, a pretty high thermostat. So I didn't say, this is a good way to make $100 a day. I went and bought 4 coolers the next day. And I went down to the beach really early, and that day I blew them out and made $400. And literally, my life changed forever because of that first experience of really going out there and kicking butt. I was like, oh my God, for the rest of my life, I will never, ever work with somebody else again, ever. I'll not work for someone else again. Never, I'll always be my own boss. It became a patent impossibility for me to work for another human being. So I did that for a couple of years, and I put myself through school that way. I did not come from a wealthy family. I came from a poor family, but a really good family. They were good people. They did not have the entrepreneurial mindset. I'll get to that later with some of the lessons. So what happens is this. So my first year, I go to college. Now I'm like, okay, I need to make some more money here. What should I do? I said, well, let me try to leverage this a bit. So I had my mother in the morning. She'd be buttering bagels for me, right? Because people didn't really buy ice until 10:30. The sun started coming up. So between 9:30 and 10:30, I would sell buttered bagels for $1.50 a piece. It would cost me 30 cents. Free labor from my mother, slave labor from mom, right? Great lady. And then I went out and I bought these puka shell necklaces. I went down to the jewelry district on 14th or 15th Street in Manhattan. 50 cents a piece for these shell necklaces. And I hired 3 kids that were 13 years old, and I trained them how to close. Not that I really even knew how yet. I said, you're going to walk behind me with your arms out with necklaces, and these kids would follow me around the beach, and they'd sell the necklaces for $4.50 a piece. I'd give them $1 a necklace. They'd sell 300 necklaces a day, these kids. I started making serious coin, and I was making $30,000, $40,000 per summer when I was in college. And I put myself through school that way. And I actually had one misstep on the entrepreneurial path to success, and I, believe it or not, spent 1 day in dental school. Are there any dentists in the room? Right? Who the fuck would want to be a dentist, right? I mean, it's the worst fucking job. Put your hands in people. It's disgusting, right? But here's why. I'll tell you why I became a dentist. It's really simple. It's freaking this. We could always trace back the problems, the mistakes, and our successes to our beliefs. My mom, wonderful woman that she is, she's still alive. When I was 2 years old, sitting in the high chair, right, she'd be spoon-feeding me applesauce. And as the applesauce was going in, she'd be, the only noble way to be wealthy is to be a doctor. You got to be a doctor. My mom's Jewish. You got to be a doctor. So I'm like, oh, you got to be a... So it's like fucking hypnosis, right? So it's true, right? So my mother... I got to get off the stage. So my mother, right, because it's a big room. So my mom keeps hypnotizing me with the fucking applesauce, right? So now I graduate from college, and if you would have said to me when I was 21 years old, what do you want to be? I'd say rich. I didn't know what I really wanted. I wanted to be rich. It was about money. So I had that voice in the back of my head that we all have, and it was saying, the only noble way to get wealthy is to be a doctor. You got to be a doctor. So I said, well, I'm not going to be a fucking doctor. That's 14 more years of school, and I want to be rich now. I said, but maybe a dentist will be great because there's only 4 more years of school, right? And that'll be Dr. Belford, so my mom will still be happy. Dentists make a fortune anyway, right? So the whole world will be perfect. It'll be Dr. Belford, I'll be rich, and the world will be perfect as it should be. So I actually applied to dental school. I was a good student. I got into dental school, right? And here's what happens. It was another pivotal moment in my life. My first day of dental school, there's an orientation. And I sit in the rooms at 105 dental students in an auditorium. So I'm looking around like, I'm sitting and sizing up the competition. Okay, it looks pretty good, right? And the dean stands up on stage, and he's this white-haired guy. He had a white jacket on, looking very dental and everything, right? Like a real dentist type, white hair, okay? He's like, welcome you all to the Baltimore College of Dental Surgery. You should be very proud to have come this far in your career, and you're going to be a pillar of the community. And he starts saying all this sort of stuff. I'm like, okay. And I'm looking around, looks pretty good. And then he says, let me say this. The golden age of dentistry is over. He goes, if you're here to make a lot of money, you're probably in the wrong place. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm in the wrong place. And I got up, I hightailed the first day. I walked, excuse me, I freaking got kids. I was looking. Then, not to belabor the point, then I did something that no one would ever forget in this dental school. I'm sure it never happened before or after, as I actually auctioned off my dental equipment. I bought, because I had to buy all this like $5,000 of shit before I actually signed up for dental school, right? That drills and this and wow. I'm like holding an auction in the school, just getting rid of the stuff, right? So, I didn't tell my mother, though, that I quit, because how could I tell my mom? I felt compelled to lie. I owed it to her, I thought, right? So she's like, how's school? Oh, it's great. For like 3 months, I hid down in Maryland because I couldn't break the news to my mom that I was not going to be a doctor, right? Finally, the money ran out. I had to get real with my life, so I went back up to New York, and I sat down, and I told my parents for the first time what my career was going to be, and it literally blew them away. I'll tell you what it was. I said to them, I want to be, which for them is one of the most evil words in the world, okay? It's why they never had any money in their lives, but it was the evil word, and I threw the S word at them. I said, I'm going to be a salesman, which for my parents was synonymous with 2 words, slime and bucket. I still have distinct memories. Anyone my age, I'm in my 40s here, remember the filler brush man? Right, my wife, fucking filler brush man is here. I can't believe it. Don't trust the salesman. Get it? I always had that belief not to trust the salesman. My mom was 5 years old. I got it. And we're going to discuss that in detail, why some of you are having problems persuading, influencing, and closing. And I'm going to show you some very powerful, some very simple ways that you can dramatically ramp up your closing rate by confronting that belief in an elegant way about not to trust, in a way that empowers people, and also with the understanding that you would only do this ethically. So anyway, I took some massive action too, and I told my parents I was going to be a salesman / slime bucket, okay? And my mother's like, oh my God, not a salesman. I said, it gets worse, Mom. I'm going to be selling meat and seafood. My son, the meat salesman. And she was like, and she was dying. I mean, literally. But, my parents are wonderful people, and they support me. And, they finally said, okay, whatever, good luck, and so on and so on. So I went down to this warehouse, and it was like a meat warehouse, and they had this business, you might know, where the people go around in little pickup trucks selling steak, shrimps, and lobster tails door to door, and that was the job, right? And I was like, all right, whatever, give it a whirl. And they put me on a truck with somebody else who was training me for the first day, and on this particular day, something happened that I would never forget, and it really defined one of the crucial distinctions that I've learned about influencing and persuasion in sales. I went out for this guy, his name was Elliot, and great guy. In the book, he's the Penguin, by the way. The guy in the book, the Penguin character, right? And Elliot was my trainer, and we go out, and he's knocking on doors all morning. You were cold calling, knocking on doors, right? And between 9 and 12, he was so positive and pumped, and he's like, knock goes, hey, my name's Elliot. I deliver filet mignon, shrimp, and lobster tails to all your neighbors. I have a couple extra boxes on the truck. I'll give them to you at cost. That was his pitch, right? No one wanted the food. So between 9 and 12, he knocked on probably 40 or 50 doors, all pumped up and positive. Then somewhere, I guess between 12 and 12:30, he got out of the truck, and his posture changed. And I watched him sort of lumber up to the door with his head hung low, and he knocked on the door, and I was like a step behind him. He's like this. He's like, hi, my name's Elliot. He goes, you wouldn't want any filet mignon, shrimp, or lobster tails, right? The last 10 people, then what he didn't say, but what his voice said was, the last 20 people didn't want any, so you probably don't want any too, I'm sure, right? So let me just not waste any more time and go on to the next person who's going to say no. That's what he was basically signaling with his body language and his tonality. And I saw that happen, and I swear to you, you don't remember everything that happens to you in life, you know what I mean? But some things, for whatever reason, make an indelible impact on your brain. That, to me, was like, I was like, holy shit. I was like, I can never, ever let myself get into that. I didn't call it state, by the way. I call it getting negative. I can never allow myself to get negative like that, because when you're negative, you can't influence anybody. And it was so obvious to me looking out from the outside in, but to Elliot, he didn't even know it was wrong. He's like saying, fuck, no one wants to know. He kept going all the no. I just sat there and listened, and I watched this guy lose his state of certainty and confidence and clarity and go into a state of fear, negativity, rejection, overwhelm. The guy couldn't sell his way out of a paper bag. Next day, I went out myself, aware of that fact, and also not aware of the fact that I was about to realize I had a special ability to speak and to really be, clever with my lines. And I went out there and boom, something just happened, and I literally broke the company record on my first day as a meat salesman. I sold out the entire truck, 35 boxes. Second day, I sold one woman like the whole truck. She bought everything in my truck. She almost was going to buy the truck from me. Like, I think she wanted to buy. I'm not kidding. How much is you? Because I made her feel really bad. I was like, sincerity. Anyway, I was very young back then. So she wanted to buy the truck. So I go back to the warehouse. They're freaking out. They load me up with even more boxes. I proceed the first week to literally shatter the company record. And I shatter it. So like 240 boxes of meat. The record had been 105 or something, right? So after about a couple of weeks of this, I'm like, why the hell am I making these bozos all this money, right? I said I'd never, because that first belief that I had formed from an early experience. Remember, our beliefs are formed through experiences in our life. Some of those early experiences that you might have been subjected to by your family, by your peers, by the school system, all these things get inserted in our brains like computer viruses, and they fucking destroy us. And they stop us from getting what we deserve. These malicious viruses. So the idea is, what do? You get a reboot and get them the fuck out, the viruses, right? Well, the bottom line is I had this belief, which is an empowering belief, that I should never work for someone else. So instantly, what did I do? I acted on it. I had a belief, I acted on it. And I said, I'm going to buy my own truck. I went down to the meat market, made myself a freezer box, started going door to door myself. And I launched a company called Manchester Farms Meat and Seafood, because it sounded good. Manchester Farms, it sounded good, right? Anyway, I do really well. I buy a second truck. Then I buy a third truck. Before I know it, I realized, wow, not only can I sell myself, but I can train other salespeople. And I came really, when I just started talking to salespeople, and they were looking at me, I knew I was saying stuff that was connecting with them, and I started developing this sort of loose system about what it meant to motivate people without knowing what I was doing, how to get people to close. And back then, it was mostly about tonality. I had this ability, I could hear, I had a good ear for tonality, for closing tonalities and influencing tonalities. And I started developing this sort of unconscious system, meaning that it wasn't out and like where I could write it down, but I knew what to say. I trained within 8 months. I had 26 trucks on the road. I became a millionaire. And I was 22, I was just turned 22 years old. I was already a millionaire. So I went out and did what all millionaires should do. I bought a beautiful red Porsche, okay? But even what more is I leased the Porsche. You think, well, I fucking pay for it, right? I leased the Porsche. I started living really well. I had a ton of money in my pocket. But in fact, I was making every classic mistake that first-time entrepreneurs make. I was growing on credit. I was overexpanding. I was undercapitalized. I wasn't keeping track of certain operational distinctions, all right? When I say I teach in entrepreneurship on day 3 of a program, what I mean is I literally dissect what it really takes to actually be successful in a business. Because I had the sales shit figured out really, really quickly. That's only one aspect of it when you're in business for yourself. So I didn't know this stuff. And again, you don't know this stuff coming out of the womb, right? You have to learn it. And you really can't learn it in school, and you can sort of find it in books and it helps you, but until you actually experience, or it's really just hammered into you and like with a hammer, it's very, really hard to get those distinctions. So I was making all these mistakes, and before I knew it, I was, boom, out of business. Because I'd grown so fast on credit, the cash flow slowed down. And if you know, you're all in business for yourself, so you know this idea that, you can get credit from people, but eventually the bill comes due, right? And if you're not making money, you've spent the money that you've got up front, you're done. Well, I did that in a very, very big way, and I also had personally guaranteed all 26 truck leases. And just like that, boom, I was bankrupt. Now I'm 23 years old. I'm fucking zeroed out. The saddest day up to my then life was when the tow truck came. They literally towed my little red Porsche away. It was like a tear trickling down my eye. And I sat there, and I was married to a great girl, my first wife back then. She was a lovely person. And, I was like, oh, my God, what am I going to do? I'm broke. I'm married. I literally had nothing. I was down to like my last $10. I heard a story about a kid I'd grown up with. His name was Michael Falk. Probably not in this room. But Michael Falk was sort of the kid, and the reason I asked that is because he was the kid everyone like picked on growing up. He was like the kid that never showered. The kid that never showered in your neighborhood, like, terrible acne. His family was really weird and shit. Like, that fucking kid's weird. You don't want to go to that house. It smells bad. That was Michael Falk, right? The kid with the bad smelling house, right? So there's always one in every neighborhood, right? So I hear this thing, Michael Falk is driving a Ferrari and making $1 million a year. I'm like, what the fuck? No way. I'm like, no way, you can't. I own my own business, and I thought I was making money, but I was making 10 grand a month back then. It's like $1 million a year. It seemed inconceivable to me. Inconceivable, right? Sure enough, I actually see the guy in his red Ferrari. One day he just pulls up, right? I see this guy. Now he's got a beautiful $2,000 suit on. He looks fucking good. The kid shook off the weirdness, right? And he's looking good. He tells me he's working on Wall Street and he's making, $1 million. This year I'll make $1 million too. I was like, fuck. I'm like, if this guy can make $1 million too, I can make $10 million. I freaking know it. That's what I said. You ever have that feeling? Raise your hand. Yeah? So I actually went down to Wall Street, okay, on the heels of personal bankruptcy. Not so easy to get a job. Just declared personal bankruptcy. I look on the application. Have you ever declared personal? I'm like, fuck. Yeah, yesterday, right? I checked the thing off. All right? So I go in there, and I literally went. It was a big, prestigious firm, and I literally sold myself a job. I went in there, and I just went in there with such certainty and confidence and used everything I'd learned up to that point in the meat business and influencing and just, saying, I'm the hardest worker. I will close harder. I'll be the biggest salesman. You have no idea what I'm capable of. And the guy, his name was Stephen Schaffman. He had something very prophetic. He said to me in response, he goes, well, I don't know. He goes, either you're going to be the biggest broker in Wall Street history or you're going to end up in jail. Guy was right on both accounts, right? Guy was fucking genius. And he gave me the job. And that was the first time I ever entered the Wall Street boardroom and heard the mighty fucking roar. And I was blown away. My book starts there on my first day of Wall Street. I entered and they say you're lower than pond scum, which is how I felt. Because I just declared bankruptcy and how I was treated because it was like the military. Sign this, step to the left, shut up and dial and smile and dial, and don't pick your head up till 12 o'clock. That was the rules, right? And I did that, and I heard these guys on the phone. They sounded good. But I knew I could sound, I just knew. I said, I can do better. And I said, I'm going to work hard. I had this amazing drive because I guess I was almost embarrassed about my failure, going bankrupt. And I just felt this overwhelming intensity that I didn't care about any of the shit in my life because there was shit in my life at this point. I was so broke that I was rolling up nickels, dimes, and quarters with my then wife to pay for shampoo. We couldn't afford shampoo. It's really fucking expensive, by the way, when you have no money, right? You ever been really broke? You're like, fucking $12 back then. It was a lot. I couldn't deal with it. Nickels, dimes, and quarters. On weekends, I'd go to the beach when it was warm out, and I'd sell ices to try to, supplement my cash flow, because I was getting paid $80 a week to work at this firm in the training program, and it was costing me $130 to commute. So I was getting worse and worse and worse. But here's the irony. The irony is that as bad as my life was financially, I was fucking thrilled. I was totally happy. You know why? Because I knew exactly where I wanted to go. I had a clear vision for my future. Not a goal. See, I believe in setting goals, but goals in the absence of a higher vision and without a powerful why are fucking worthless. It's the stuff of failures. People that are serial goal setters, we set goals, we let them go in 2 seconds, and no one gives a shit anymore. In 1959, Earl Nightingale, you know the name Earl Nightingale? The Strangest Secret? What an amazing concept that was in 1959, 1960, right? It's gotten bastardized. This idea of setting goals and taking action. You need more. You have to have a vision above your goals. So this is what Frank was talking about. We just said it, he blurted it into it. People don't have a why. But that's what he was saying. The people say, yeah, they go to Frank, I want to be rich. I want to launch this product. I want to make this DVD. But it's bullshit. if there's nothing above it that's truly, truly driving you to take action. At the heart of influence, by the way, on a separate level, and I'm just going to jump ahead for a second, people, if you're looking to influence people, to get people to want to be on your team, to join you in a launch, to be your affiliate, whatever it might be, people will never, ever buy into your goals, but they'll buy into your vision for the future. They'll never follow you. They won't follow your goals, but they'll follow your vision. Every human being on the planet, we're just built this way. We are hungry, thirsty for a vision. When Pam came to me, I didn't ask her to, I would never ask her to leave Tony after all these years. Pam came to me and said, I want to make this move because, she'd been with him for many, many years. I said, what's it? She goes, it's your vision. Your vision is so bold. I love so much with the integrity because, I made some huge mistakes in my life. And the first thing I said to Pam, I said, Pam, everything we do, I want you to make it. I said, Pam, 10 times is whatever, I don't care what it costs. I want more value in every piece of content I have, everything I do. I want 10 times as much value as anyone would ever expect that meets me. That's your mantra. And if you can't speak to me in absence of anything, go for 10 times more value than anyone would ever want and expect. I said, and we will become so successful that way because when you give value and you have the other shit in place, you make a fortune. It was the vision that I had that attracted Pam. It was the vision that Frank had and that I had together that it caused us to attract each other, to get Jimmy to move across the... You get it? People will never follow your goals. They follow your vision. Which leads us to the question, well, how do you create a compelling vision for the future? I mean, really, a compelling vision for the future that not only inspires you, it's got to inspire you first, but also how do you share that vision with other people in a way that turns them on, that empowers them, that makes them want to be part of what you are. When I say buy into you, not just with money, but with their time and their sweat equity. When you have a compelling vision and you learn how to share that vision, you'll find your internet marketing, the problems will begin to melt away. Because people want to just be in business with you, to be around you, because they're thirsty for your vision. And it makes influencing people a whole lot easier. So I'm at this firm now, slaving away on the phone, learning by listening to other people's language patterns, how they close, right? And I'm happy. And then my first day as a stockbroker finally comes. And it's October 19th, 1987. Black fucking Monday. And I watched in shock and awe as the market went down 508 points in one day. My first day. And the brokers are like walking around like, holy fuck, the game is over. I'm like, what do you mean the game's over? I didn't get to play yet. You guys have played. I'm like, they're like, no, the game is over. I'm like, no, it can't be over, right? And I'm banging away the phone. It's like, ha, 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 laughing. People are laughing at me. I'm like, oh, Mr. Doge, ha, you're a broker, poor you. You're fucked, right? Awful, all right? So now, and here, it gets worse. The firm, LF Rothschild, was in business like 100 years, 112 years. They closed down the first day. They're done. They shut their doors. They lost their money in the crash, and I'm out of a job. So imagine going from all this place of vision and certainty to this awful state where I'm like literally want to jump out the window, right? And I go downstairs, my tail's dragging on the floor. It's so low between my legs, right? And it gets worse. The front page of the paper, the New York Post, it says, the death of Wall Street. All brokers will become cab drivers. I'm like, I should have stayed in fucking dental school. This is freaking... So I go home and it gets worse again. Because my first wife, she was a great woman, but she wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, you know? She just never watched the news. She never read the newspaper. All she was watching soap operas and Oprah all day. So while on that day, October 19th, 1987, everyone knew the market crashed, it was everyone but her. She thought things were fine. So I walk through the door, and she comes running with champagne. How was your first day as a stockbroker, honey? Did you kick ass? We divorced shortly thereafter. So there you go. Actually, a little bit later than that, but I literally collapsed. I'm like, what do you mean no? And I collapsed in her arms, and I started to cry. And I got to this point in my life. It was like that point, and I know we've all been there. And, you know, I've had some really, 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 really low lows in my life. And some that would, you know, maybe broken some people in this room, but probably not others. You would have overcome what I overcame too. The worst part of my low points is I had no one to blame but my fucking self. See, when I was at my lowest points in my life, it was self-induced, self-inflicted pain. I'd made mistakes. I'd blown some gifts from God. I'd blown some strategic decisions that I'd made that were right on the money. I'd blown up some inventions that I come up with that revolutionized Wall Street on the sales side, and I blew it all, and no one to blame but myself. So anyway, the market crashes. I go home, right, and I take that knockout punch like that day, and I'm like, I didn't think I could go on. I did not think I could go on. Now I was, 23, broke, and had no hope because it looked like the economy was going to be, they were talking about a depression back then in '87. It was just awful. So I took the punch for about 12 hours, and then I realized I had to pay the rent. Rent money was vibrating in my mind, and I had to do something about that. So I picked up the help wanted section of the paper, and I was looking for anything but brokerage. No one was hiring. And I stumbled upon, just by sheer chance, an ad for stockbrokers. But it wasn't on Wall Street. It was in Long Island, which was kind of odd because, Wall Street's Wall Street. I didn't know that much about the market back then. And I walked into this firm, and the second I walked in, I'm like, geez, what the hell's going on here? They were selling penny stocks. Now, I didn't know what a penny stock was. Conceptually, yes, I knew it was a stock under $1. I didn't know what the context meant, what it was all about. And the things I noticed in the firm were three things. Number one, there were no computers on the desks. Number two, the people dressed like shit in jeans and flip-flops. And number three, they were lying their asses off on the phone. They were ridiculous pitching, hyping bullshit. They were just hyping and bullshitting people. And it was like hard on. It's like, because I came from a big firm where you have to do things a certain way. You can't lie. You have to hedge yourself and, use certain language, which I'll show you, that is very powerful and influencing, but not illegal and not unethical, right? And they were just lying outright. And I'm like, holy Christ, how could this even be legal? But sure enough, on the wall is, SEC member, NASD member. Right? I'm like, okay, whatever, and it must be legal. So, what a fucking rationalizer, right? It's a great power, isn't it? We're all great rationalizers. So anyway, we can justify anything, and I'll get to that later if we want. So I walked in, and I was so broken. The guy explains to me the commission structure. I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, the commissions were huge. Like, if someone sent in $1,000, you would get to keep $500. Versus on Wall Street, where I was trained, if they sent in $1,000, you keep $10. So I said to him, let me understand. So if I get someone to send in $500,000, I get to keep $250,000? He's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Because rich people don't buy penny stocks. I said, why? Because they just don't buy them. They're not going to risk their money on this shit. And that didn't make sense to me at the time. It just didn't make sense. Kind of like that people would go buy a dog training thing online, okay, that some guy dictated in for $20. But they fucking do. Some shit just doesn't make sense, right? So I was like, all right, well, whatever, fine. I'm so burnt out on failure. I felt like a serial failure, right? Like first the meat business and now the market crash, right? I felt stamped on my forehead, right? So I sit down behind the desk, and they hand me this stack of, here are the companies you can recommend. And I picked one which seemed like the dog with the least fleas, right? And it was called Arncliffe National. I still remember it. It was a cosmetics company that was just getting into business. They just signed a deal with Revlon. And when I was done, it's on a deal with Macy's to distribute there, right? And when I was done writing my script, I'm a really good script writer, right? It sounded like fucking Revlon, this company. It sounded really, really good. And it didn't even have any lies in it. What I was doing was I was using metaphors and associations that the chairman had been a VP at Revlon. They just signed a contract with Macy's. And through this very clever strategy of language and hedging, I created the perception of massive value for Arncliffe. Okay, and I wrote this whole pitch out, and the biggest trade in penny stock history was like $4,000 or $5,000. That's the biggest trade ever, because you were dealing with average moms and pops. They weren't calling rich people. On Wall Street, they called rich people. Here in the suburbs, when you're selling penny stocks, you're called people with little or no net worth. First call, I pick up the phone, I start going, and as I'm talking, I never pitched the stock before. The words start flowing out, gushing out in torrents, and I know it sounds really good. I'm like, I just get into a state of absolute certainty, and the words start flowing, and the kids start coming out, like 8 kids, and they start listening to me. They're all gathered around me, right? And I ended up closing the guy for $5,500, my first trade, and I got to keep $2,750 for myself. And I was like, wait, it's good and bad. What happened next gets a little complicated. So anyway, I closed the guy, right? And I'm like, Jesus Christ. And all the kids like, how'd you do that? We know you sounded different. And I was using what I'd heard at the bigger firms and applying it to a different market. They'd never heard these words before. And I had my own style and flair for it. And over those 6, and I started making massive money, 50, 60,000 a month right away, and built myself up a nest egg, got myself out of debt. My life started changing. My wife had nice jewelry. We had a beautiful Jaguar. Things started to improve. And about 8 or 9 months later, the opportunity came for me to open up my own brokerage firm. Someone approached me, and at first I was reluctant because I'd had that failure in the past. And here's a very important lesson for all of you. If there's one thing that you take away from today, one lesson, besides the fact that you got to learn to fucking close. Please, just don't forget that. But besides that, there's one other lesson, is that we as human beings, everyone in this room, you, me, whoever, we are not the mistakes of our past. We are not the failures of our past. We are the resources and capabilities we glean from our past. Fundamentally, the single greatest difference between people who are succeeding in life and those who are failing is people who are failing in life, not just in finances, emotionally, in relationships, they hang on to the mistakes of the past and they dwell in it. Versus people who are succeeding in life, they can look back at the past and use them as lessons. Okay, that's the key. At that point, and what happens is when an insult comes along in our life and you fail, so to speak, right? Like I did that blowout in the meat business. Well, there's different meanings that you can apply to the same event. You know, one possible meaning was, hey, you know what? I went into business. I didn't know some of this stuff. I wasn't taught how to be an entrepreneur. I was a great salesman, didn't know the other side, and I paid the price. Now I've learned the hard way, so I know what not to do anymore. We all know. Ask any person who's rich, they'll say, I've learned more from my failures. Who's learned more from their failures here than we all? It's obvious. You learn more from the bad shit than the good shit, okay? It's when the things are, I learned more from blowing out in the meat business than anything ever, from that one single failure, okay? So, but the problem was that's the empowering meaning. The disempowering meaning that you can apply through language is, maybe I'm not entrepreneur material. How many of you have ever felt like that in your life once? A bunch of you. You get to that. It's to this day. Just, to this day, that voice, it's still always there. You always have that little angry, that nasty voice telling you what you can't do, what you're not capable of, what you shouldn't try. Learning to tame that voice and to actually switch it, to harness that voice, and there's a way to do it, to turn that fear you have into a motivating factor is incredibly empowering to you. So we'll talk about how to do that. So back then, I almost didn't go forward because I had this belief, maybe I'm not entrepreneurial. Maybe I should just work for someone else. One failure. But I broke through it. I started my firm, and I started this time, rather than going all out with a beautiful place, I started out of the closet of a used car dealership with one guy, okay? And I started selling penny stocks. And I started training. These young kids came to me. They were very young, a couple of guys that worked for me, and they had some friends. Everyone was about 18 to 22 years old, and there wasn't one member of the Lucky Sperm Club in my group, okay? I was not going after the high-end guys. They were not geniuses by any stretch of the imagination. The average IQ was like Forrest Gump on 3 hits of acid, okay? Those were my people, okay? And that's why I hired. They were young kids, and and now watch the lessons here, though, they never believed they were capable of greatness. Their parents never told them that growing up. They never were told by society they were capable of being million-dollar-a-year guys or girls, right? They didn't have any empowering beliefs. They were mostly emotional vegetables when it came to wealth and success. They knew nothing, right? So I had all these guys, okay, and those are how to train them, right? So it starts off in the selling penny stocks for me. I'm doing well, and I'm giving these meetings, and the meetings are fun, and they're great, right? And then one day, you have these magic moments in your life. You just have them where the light bulb goes off, and I had this moment, all right? And I said, wait a second. Why the hell am I not calling rich people? And I started to actually go back to the conversation in my mind where the guy said rich people don't buy penny stocks. But now that I had some success behind me, I was able to dig deeper into my own memory bank, my own logic reasoning center, and said, well, why wouldn't they buy penny stocks? Think about it, right? So I started coming up with all the reasons why. Well, maybe they think there's no value because the prices are really low. Who's going to put money into a penny stock? And I had a couple of reasons why. But on the other side of it, I had a lot of reasons why they would buy. See, rich people love to speculate. They love to gamble, right? Maybe they're not going to put their whole net worth into a penny stock, but they'll certainly put some money into a penny stock. That was my belief, right? So I went out and took some action, and I bought a list of the wealthiest 1% of Americans. people that were all business owners and worth over $5 or $10 million. They all had money in the market. And I went to my main guy, Danny Porrish from the book. You know Danny from the book? Who's a freaking maniac, right? Danny was the one who organized the midget tossing, not me, okay? But he's a great salesman, Danny, great salesman. I said, Danny, here's what we're going to do. We're going to try something new. We're going to call rich people and try to sell them penny stocks. And then I ran a very, very basic strategy for entrepreneurship. I want to show you what it is. And I don't want you to take too much stock in it in the sense that it's vitally important, but you've heard this before from other, I'm sure you have. If you haven't, it'll be revolutionary, but you should have heard this before. But I want to give you a different take on it so you can understand it in a different light. The basic strategy of like knowing your outcome, it's a basic NLP strategy from Dr. Richard Bandler in the beginning, Tony Robbins. Very basic NLP strategy. Know your outcome, take massive action. I'm the worst writer in the world. Analyze your results, see what's working, what's not, and change your plan accordingly. Who's heard this before? Raise your hand, please. Right. This is no big deal, right? Nothing I invented, no great shakes. Instinctively, I think we all know that this is the right strategy, how you go about accomplishing a goal or achieving your vision, right? The breakdown, what I want to focus on what the breakdown is, the problem happens over here. Is when you keep taking your actions and you're analyzing your results and the shit ain't working. So when the shit's not working, you start falling into a disempowered state of being pissed off and overwhelmed and angry. You become uncertain about yourself, your own skill set. So the idea is that when you're running this strategy, and I'll get into this a little more later, is you need to maintain yourself in a positive state while you're analyzing the results. This is the killer, everybody, in this formula. If you're running this strategy, which is so basic, we all know this, we tend to fall into negative, disempowered states somewhere in here. And then when we analyze our results, we're doing it in a very negative frame. Next time we go out to take action, we'll take a bit less action because we don't believe that we'll actually succeed. Remember I started off said people really don't take action, not so much they're scared of failing because they really don't believe it'll work. That's what starts happening when people run this formula. The difference between success and failure is not knowing this. It's fucking doing it in a way that empowers you and doesn't destroy you. And it's not that easy. It takes some work. It takes some training in your own mind, a couple of crucial distinctions, which I'll share with you, but you can do this. So anyway, I was running this strategy back then, not knowing it was this, but I just said, okay, fair enough. I tried to sell them penny stocks. No one bought. We actually cold called 150 people. Not one investor bought a penny stock. So I said to Danny, all right, let's try something else. I said, let's take this stock. It was like a $6, it was a 60-cent stock. I said, let's reverse split the stock 1 for 10, which just means all it means is that you're taking the stock and making it $6. It's the same fucking stock. No difference. Everyone follow me? It doesn't matter. It's just less shares outstanding, higher price, same name of the company. The company's not changed, but by repackaging it at $6, we said, well, maybe that will make it more palatable. And for people that are, you guys are marketing experts, sometimes the price point, the higher price implies more value, right? So we tried that. Again, no one bought. We couldn't have anybody to come invest in the $6 stock. Name of the company was Ventura Entertainment. So this is my second shot. So what do you do again? Did I get, oh, shit, this is terrible? No. Change the approach again. And how many times did you change your approach? Yell it out, please. Right. So we all know this, right? Good. I was in some rooms like, well, we don't know. I said, many's a fucking takes, right? But anyway, so I was changing my approach now again, and this time I said, okay, well, there's some things working against me. Here's what they are. It's pretty obvious. And I had Danny as a sounding board. I said, number one, they don't know who the hell we are. No one's ever heard of Stratton Oakmont back then. Now they all know Stratton Oakmont, right? Number two, they don't know us. We're strange. We're not the local stockbrokers, right, offering them a deal. We're some stockbroker calling over the phone. And number three, they never heard of the company. Some $6 stock they never heard of. We have too much shit going against us. I said, let's reframe the whole thing. Number one, the fact that they never heard against us, we're going to turn that into a positive. So I created a script that said the reason you never heard of us was the last 10 years we were dealing strictly with institutions. So I made it scarcity. I added some scarcity without even knowing that it was called scarcity. There's logical sense, right? Because I was still in my early 20s. And I said, instead of selling them a $6 stock, we're going to sell them a $40 stock. We're going to sell them Eastman Kodak first. We're going to sell them something that they've heard of before, a name they respect, and we'll eliminate some of the negatives from the equation. And that's precisely what we did. I wrote a script for Kodak, and it was a great script because the story of Kodak was amazing. It was back when they were in litigation with Polaroid. and they were being sued, so it was the idea that certain institutions wouldn't buy the stock because they were in litigation, and they had the money to pay the litigation. It's one of those technical things they couldn't invest institutionally. So the idea was as soon as the lawsuit is settled, and it was supposed to be settled any day, the stock would go up. So I wrote this script for that. It had urgency, it had scarcity, it had great metaphors, some stuff I'll explain to you later in script building, how you actually build sales letters in script. And we started pitching it, and boom, people started buying Eastman Kodak from us. Just like that, no big deal. We weren't making any money on Eastman Kodak, but what we were doing was starting a relationship. You might call that an opt-in, whatever it might be. We were getting paid for an opt-in, and it's even one step beyond that. They bought something, actually invested their money, about $5,000 or $10,000 in Eastman Kodak. I said to Danny, here's step 2. 10 days later, we're going to call them back, and now we're going to recommend the $6 stock. Once they have a relationship with the firm, once they sort of feel that they can trust us and that we're real. So we waited 10 days, and I said, Danny, here, you take a stack of leads, and I'll take a stack of leads. And we started rifling calling these leads to see if we can convert these people from this one small trade of $5,000. We didn't make any money into a bigger trade where we could make some real money. We called them back, and I start calling. I can't get a connect through. I'm dialing, and Danny, I see he's on a phone call, right? So after about 3 or 4 minutes, he comes back in holding a ticket in his hand. And he's like, white as a ghost. He looks like he's like, what happened? I said, the guy by goes, yeah. I said, how much? He goes, $120,000 worth. All right? I was like, holy fucking Christ. I said, literally, that was a moment in my life, and I bet some of you who've had success, when it happens, you know, boom, it always happens quick. There's only one way in this world to get rich, and that's quick. You know why? It's true. It's true. The truth of the matter is, though, because the world's too fucking expensive to get rich slowly. You can't get rich slowly, right? Everything costs so much. You got to do it quickly. However, and by the way, I could show any one of you how to get rich quick, but not with a get-rich-quick scheme. See, here's the difference. It's not a scheme that you get rich quick. What takes time is lining up all the elements of success. All the work, it's work here to get all the shit exactly right. There's work here to get this right. But once you have the elements, the shit lined up, when it hits, boom, it hits. And the money pours in avalanches. It doesn't trickle in, it fucking pours in. And it's happened to me every time I've made fortunes, lost fortunes, always struggle, nothing's happening, no results, boom, massive results. So I came up with this concept back in the day of learning how to, what I call, I think it's my own right, Pam, you've never heard this one. Pam, maybe you've heard this one before. I call failing elegantly. You learn to fail elegantly. Okay, what I'm saying is it allows you how to take actions and take shots in life in such a way that the downside is very, very small. It's contained failure. So you maximize on the lessons and minimize on the financial hurt and the time lost. Failing elegantly. And if you do that, and as you're lining up the elements of success, it's not working, little tiny missteps and failures, and all of a sudden, boom, you hit it, and you soar to massive wealth and success. That's the formula, and it works every single time. I will fight anyone in a verbal death match here to tell me that if you actually line up all the elements here, if you master this stuff and master that stuff, there's absolutely no way you will not be rich. Not tomorrow, maybe. It still might take some time till that lightning strikes, but once it does, boom, then you send it in. And that's when you work double hard with double the intensity. And when that window opens, it never stays open forever. It doesn't. The window opens and it shuts. I'm at a point in my life right now when my window's open, wider than it's ever been. But I had a year before, so I was struggling, and I was thinking, before I hit it really doing what I'm doing now, I had all these missteps. Still making money, but not getting the result I wanted. So I just kept changing my approach. And I will tell you, my partner, my future wife, and she'll know that I wasn't always able. Just so you know, I was not able to always do this. A lot of time I was angry, pissed off, and negative. I'm not a robot. And nor are you, and you will not be able to avoid this. What I'm trying to say is this, is that while we can't avoid feeling our feelings with human beings, at least to understand what's really going on inside, that as soon as the initial shock waves off, you can pop yourself back into a resourceful state and take action. I'm not saying to become a fucking robot. We can't do that. But the idea is to become aware of what really it is that screws you up from taking the right resourceful actions again and again and again and stop it. So you feel crappy for a while, but it's contained and you move forward. So anyway, At that moment that Danny handed me this ticket, I had paid $2 a share for the stock. I had made $80,000. He sold the guy 20,000 shares of a $6. Like I made 80 grand in one phone call. And I was like, oh my fucking God. And I saw the whole thing. I saw the future before me. And I looked out into the room. There was 12 people there with these old wooden desks because I hadn't made any of the mistakes I made with my meat company. It was lean and mean all the way. Lean and mean. I was making nothing but money even while I wasn't hitting it. And I said, Jesus Christ. I said, I knew it. I saw the future. And what I also saw is how the hell am I going to train these 12 kids, these 13 kids, to become master closing machines? See, there's a huge difference between selling to poor people versus selling to rich people. When you're selling to poor people, they buy shit, they buy little bits of stuff, and they can be taken and they can be hyped and bullshitted. Wealthy people that are educated, and that's a great market to go to the wealthy people. Hey, to deal with those people, you can't be talking hype and bullshit. There's got to be logic and reason and elegance and professionalism. And as Brendan was talking, he's the expert at this. Brandon is you being an expert. It's funny, I didn't know who Brendan Bashar was. I didn't know him. And I saw one of his videos. I started laughing when I saw his video. I said, this fucking young kid, he's got to figure it out. He's young, but expert's a caveat. I started laughing inside. I'm like, this is too funny because it's so true. And the idea is that unless you're perceived as an expert, you're screwed. It's very hard to influence someone if you're perceived as a novice. So what happened was, and now imagine knowing, and I knew that back then. All right, now I'm like 24, 25, and I'm like, oh shit, okay, so I got to actually transform these people, the 12 people with Forrest Gump IQs, right? I got to make them sound like Wall Street wizards. And also give them the inner game here, up here, because now they're speaking to wealthy people, and unless they have it up here, they're going to get slapped around by these rich people. But let me give you as much as I can, okay, and show you how you can apply this to your business without even knowing it. Just a little bit of it, 2% of it will allow you to start becoming more effective at persuading people. So here's the deal. That moment when I realized I had to retrain everybody, I said, everyone put down, we cursed a lot. I said, put down the fucking phones. Put down the fucking phones, everybody. I had them put down their phones, all right? I want you to take every piece of paper on your desk and throw it in the fucking garbage. Rip it up. We start from scratch. Everything you've learned, everything you know up to this point, I want you to forget everything you're about to relearn, everything from the time you were this big about language, communication, and something happened to me. And I popped into a state of such certainty where I was channeling. I believed that I was really channeling stuff from somewhere else because I started having access to knowledge. And they talk, who's read the Think and Grow Rich? Anybody here? Which is, if you haven't read it, read it. It's by Napoleon Hill. It's a fabulous book. It's one of the first, I think it's the first book I read on wealth and success. Changed my life in many, many ways. Okay, an amazing book. And they talk about this, the universal force, and it sounds kind of kooky, you know, come on, it's all bullshit, right? But something happens in some moments in your life, and whatever it is, you're able to access sort of this higher intelligence within yourself and channel. And words started coming out of my own mouth, and I didn't even know what was going on. And I devised this system. What I said to them was basically this. I said, the days of this, you know, of going out and carpet bombing and calling people with no money and trying to get them to invest money they don't have, it's over. We're done. From now on, we only speak to the wealthiest people in the world. I said, and there's 3 things you have to establish within 4 seconds of the conversation. The moment you pick up that phone, and let me tell you something. Who here would like to learn to attract more affiliates in their life? Raise your hand. Okay? Who would like to have better relationships with their credit card processors? I said to Frank, I said, what's the worst thing? Fucking credit card processors. Not in the affiliates. And 3 or 4 things that were core things that people could instantly have more success with. I said there's 3 things that have to be established. The moment you pick up that phone, you have 4 seconds. If you don't establish this in the first 4 seconds of a conversation, you're done. Now, you have about 10 more seconds, in truth, of catch-up ball. But if 14 seconds you don't have it established, you can't influence anybody. You're done. And here's what those 4 things are. Number 1, in 4 seconds, they must know that you are, number 1, sharp as a tack. 2, enthusiastic as hell. And 3, an expert in your field. Brendan Bashar, an expert. I laugh so much when I saw an expert in your field. If those 3 things are not established, like, you're done. Why is that? Well, in truth, okay, think about this. You know, do you really want to deal with a freaking novice? When you go and buy a car, or you buy a stock, or you do anything, who do you want to, when you get a haircut, who do you want to deal with, the pro or a novice? Pro? Of course, right? Okay? Let me tell you something, okay? As human beings, it's just we judge books by their covers. Our moms told us not to. Our dads told us not to. We make instant decisions about people. The second we see them, we size them up. And because nowadays most of communication occurs on the phone, over our cell phones, you're not even seeing them. So how is that person sizing you up if they can't see you? Tone of bingo, your tonality. There are two things you establish with tonality and body language when you're in person. And those two together make up approximately 90 or 91% of human communication. And you've probably heard that or read that somewhere else. It's a fact. It's true. 91% is body language, tonality. 9% is what? The words. Yet when I walk into any phone room or hear any person, if I heard one of you on the phone trying to influence an affiliate, a credit card processor, a customer, I promise you that maybe only this many of you, a very sliver, would actually be maximizing their tonality to establish these three things within 4, and then you have another 10 seconds to play catch-up ball, or you're done. You're not doing it. And it's so easy to do. Overall, there are 29 tonal patterns. You're like, fuck, 29, that's too much to learn. You're already using them. You just don't know it. And because you don't know what they are and what they can do emotionally to the person you're speaking to, you don't trigger them at the right time. You understand that concept? You do it. You're saying this stuff anyway. Who's had a time in their life where they felt really certain and spoke certain? Raise your hand. Okay, fine. Who here has had a time in their life when they felt like something was really in short supply and they called someone and told a secret? Raise your hand. Who's told a secret before? Who hasn't told a secret in their life? Come on. Everyone, raise your hand if you told a secret. When you tell a secret, what do? You whisper, okay? Let me tell you something, okay? Whispering on a phone call, influencing, is so powerful when you whisper at the right moment, when you lower your voice, when you raise your voice, when you lower your voice. Speeding up, slowing down. Taking a declarative statement and turning it into a question. When you speak to someone, especially in your industry, don't kid yourselves. I get what Frank said so clear. I was talking about last night with my girlfriend. We're talking about this idea that the misconception that some internet marketers have is they think that if they perfect the internet marketing side of things, they won't have to deal with other human beings on some level. It's just bullshit. You still got to communicate with people. Okay? You must become the most effective communicator you can be, and that means mastering the art of tonality. Using your voice, the rhythm, the tones, to imply hidden meanings to the words that you say. The same way in Frank's beautiful sales letters, there's hidden meanings all over. What do you think he's doing? What do you think happens when something's italicized in writing and you stress it? Or there's a question mark where it shouldn't be in a sales letter, and something is boldened and something is in light type. It's tonality on paper. I'm an author, and I found it very difficult to become an author. Writing did not come easy to me. It took me a long time to really become a competent writer because I didn't realize the power of tonality through grammar and line. It's a different art. But once you master the art of tonality, influencing becomes really, really easy because the words, the language patterns, are there. I'll hand them to you on a silver platter. The language patterns to influence are there. Some of them border on hypnotic language patterns. Some of them are very basic and just cut to logical ways the brain works. Some cut to emotional reasons why people take action. But the language patterns are easy. What people don't pay enough attention to is what really influences people, which is tonality. And secondly, your body language. Here's the irony of body language. When it's in person, people start sizing up in 1/24th of a second. They did a study with this a brain machine where they can actually see what's happening as you see a new person. And they saw, boom, 1/24th of a second, it's up and down. Huge spike, and you're down. The brain calculates that fast in body language. So when I teach people how to become effective influencers and closers, it's not about becoming some hard-charging, cliched salesperson. Sometimes that's called for in some industries, but more often it's not about that. More often, it's about being mellow and being persuasive by using tonalities that are pleasing to the ear and that insert subliminal messages as you're talking. And here's what those messages are. Number one, A, that you care. I care. This is the number one most important thing that has to be established on a subconscious, not a conscious. Tell someone I really care about you. They'll say, what a freaking lying sack of shit salesman this is. I care. I really care about you. People don't believe you when you say you care. Ultimately, when they know you, yes, you get to that point. The way you establish that you care about someone is through your tone of voice. From an empathetic, sympathetic tone used in precisely the right point of an oral presentation. And you can, and someone, they won't even know why, that people will feel, wow, this guy really cares, this girl, she really cares about me. So number one is you have to establish that you care. Number two, that you're just like them. People associate, people make decisions, want to do business with people who are like them, not who are opposite of them. When you go out and join a club, a country club, or any organization, you don't say, wow, this is a really great place. There's not a soul there who's like me. No. You go and say, wow, everyone else is a cool place. They share my interests. They're just like me. So you join, you associate. When you're trying to influence somebody, okay, the perception has to be, I'm just like you. Now, the mistake most salespeople make, okay, and what I'm getting at here is something called, starts with R. Anyone want to guess it? Rapport, right, which is a word we all know well, which is the most misunderstood word in the English language in my book. It's ridiculous. What people think constitutes rapport is often repulsive. You know what repulsive means? To repel. I don't mean like you're repulsive looking, okay? But you can either be repulsive or attractive. You know, who knows repulsive people? Raise your hand. We all know repulsive people. What is it about them that's repulsive? Is it usually their words? More often than not, it's their body language and their freaking tone of, you can't even talk to them. And other people, yet when they talk to you, they have what's called charisma. You just you're attracted to them, you want to be around them, you want to do business with them. Some people say, well, you know, Jordan, and here's a reason. People with I don't have charisma, it's not who I am. Shut up. Get some fucking charisma. You can learn. That's bullshit. That's the bullshit story. Anybody can learn to have charisma. Because it's a bit of body language and tonality. That's it. And not saying stupid shit, okay? But mostly, it's about body language. Don't tell me you don't have charisma. I'll teach you to have charisma. It's not some magic freaking bottle, okay? It takes a little time, but it's not. And with charisma, it's fucking simple, everybody. Tonality, body language, without saying stupid shit. So what I taught my brokers, okay, and I really didn't even know this. It's like now I have it broken down so mathematically because what happened many years later is when when the book came out and the movie was announced, I started getting offers to come speak all over the world. And I was like, shit, well, it was like, we want you to train our salesmen, train us to become closers all over, like Deutsche Bank, Goldman Sachs, Credit Suisse, our Royal Bank, biggest brokerage firms in the world, then companies like Symantec, huge companies. I'm like, fuck, well, they want me to, we need 3 hours for you to I'm like, 3 hours? I had these guys captive for years. See, what happened was, so I started teaching these guys the straight line system. And I'll show you visually what the straight line is. I called it the straight line because out of sheer frustration, like every morning I'd give a meeting for about an hour. And every afternoon I'd give another meeting for about an hour and a half. Every day for 5 years. As the firm started with 12 people and grew to thousands. And imagine a room about twice the size of this, packed from front to back with desks, okay, people banging away on the phone, pacing around. It was absolutely insane. You walk in, you're like, holy shit, is this an alternative universe? That's what happened ultimately. But in the beginning, it was 12 guys, okay, and trying to explain to them, like, I was like, don't you fucking, I was killing me inside. Like, they weren't getting it. I said, every sale is the fucking same. They're like, what? I'm like, every sale is the same. Every encounter, every negotiation, every sale's the same. I'm like, watch, it's a fucking straight line. Here's your open here. And I was like, that's how frustrating. I was like, here's the open, here's the close, right? Now, this is going to be every sale. They'll try to go off the line, right? They'll here and here, below and above, right? These are the boundaries. You will not allow the encounter to go outside the boundaries. And that is called what? Controlling the sale. At the essence of effective communication, at the essence of influence in your business right now, once you learn to control the linguistic encounter, you will be shocked at what will happen. So I taught them, number one, to control the sale. Here's the perfect sale where they agree with everything you say. From the first word you utter, they're on board with you. They're saying yes to every question you ask. Perfect sale. How often does that happen? Not too often, right? So what happens is the customer has a tendency, the prospect, to go off the line. They want to go off the line. You want to keep them on the line. What you have here, between here and here, is your healthy boundaries of where the sale can go. As long as the sale stays within these boundaries, you're in control. If it goes outside the boundaries, you're out of control. In the boundaries, there's two things that you're doing. Number one, you're establishing instant massive rapport through tonality and body language. And number two, using that rapport to gather intelligence, to find out what the prospect truly needs, what his true desires are. Because here's the deal. Remember I said those three things? What are they? Sharp as attack, or sharp as attack, enthusiastic, and what else? Expert. Expert, you feel. Those three things, right? But why? What is the higher purpose of this? What it really means is this. What this all rolls up to, one thing is that you are a person worth listening to. And taking it one step higher than that, because you're someone who could help them achieve their goals. You could help them get what they want. That's why these three things are so important, because they chunk up to a higher purpose, which is that you're a guy that can help them, or a girl who can help them get what they want in life. If they don't think you can help them, they're not going to want to talk to you. So imagine this. Here you are in the early portions of any, not just a sale, whatever encounter it might be, whatever you're trying to influence, right? And if you let the sale go out of control, what are they saying to themselves? He ain't a fucking expert. They know. They know. If they start to control the encounter, they know that you're a novice. The idea is to be able to allow them to speak, because you want to find out exactly what they want, what their goals are, but you need to contain that within these boundaries. And as long as you're within these boundaries, you're in control. If you cross over, you go to fucking Pluto. I'll give you an example. People think that rapport is like if the guy starts talking about hunting in the countryside, you'll spend an hour talking about fucking hunting, right? I've heard some phone calls when the guy goes, oh, yeah, well, they're talking about a trading system, right? This internet-based trading system, right? And back and forth it goes, and the guy's qualifying the guy to see if he has money or whatnot. He goes, so how long are you thinking about becoming a trader for? And the guy says, oh, about a year or so, and I have this place up in the countryside up in northern England and so on and so forth. And the guy's like, oh, really? Oh, my God, I love hunting. I always go for, and they start talking about fucking hunting. For like 10, 15 minutes, they're talking about hunting because the salesman thinks that's how he's getting rapport. Bullshit. There's no rapport there. The guy knows you. If you have all this time, what does that mean? You ain't that busy. You're not an expert. Okay, when the key to state management and influencing 3 states, you need to learn to trigger at will. Certainty, clarity, and conviction. The 3 states. The way you do it, and those of you who've been through any NLP training, okay, the easiest way, the most surefire way is through anchoring. Okay, I can't do it right. I don't have time to do it right now. If I could, I would. Just don't have the time to do it. But the important thing to know is that I have taken anchoring for myself, my own life, to a different level through sense of smell. And I actually add smells. Frank freaked out when I walked. He goes, what the fuck are you doing? I said, because I took a snort of, not cocaine, but I took an actual, I've associated certain smells with states I want. It's the most powerful, and I show you how to do that in the longest time. I just don't have time here, but it's incredibly powerful because nothing brings you back to a state like your smell. It's like a whole new level of anchoring. And once I did that, it's really, really empowering. So anyway, that's why state management is so important. Certainty, clarity, confidence, courage, the C's, right? Super important, right? So anyway, now I change my state, and I start saying, look, woman, I'm so sorry, ma'am. Come on, I tell her my life story. Next thing, she's laughing. And we end up finishing the call, and that was great. Of course, I got rejected for the fucking insurance. Anyway, who would insure my liver, right? But there are ducks everywhere. I want you to nail this into your psychology here, because if you ever see yourself in a moment taking on a duck-like mentality, this sort of impossibility notion of what can't be done, you can't influence when you're a duck. Eagles are the ones who can influence. I went up for July 4th weekend to Big Bear. You know Big Bear, right? Not the nicest place in the world, but it's a decent place. We rented a very nice cabin in a nice resort up in Big Bear, and I wanted to take my 2 kids and rent jet skis. So I go down to the front lobby to rent these jet skis, okay? There's 4 jet skis in a dock. It's 12:20 in the afternoon. I say to the woman behind the desk, I said, excuse me, can I rent these jet skis? She's like, they're rented. I'm like, what? I'm like, but they're right. She goes, oh, no, someone's rented them. I said, for the hour? She goes, yeah, for this whole hour. I said, well, they didn't show up. I see the bill. I see it. The bill's growing. I'm like, wah, wah, wah. I'm like, well, she goes, well, I don't know. But I said, did they pay for the jet skis? She goes, no. I'm like, wait a second. They didn't pay for the jet skis. So they're just sitting there begging, I'll pay for the whole hour. If they come back, I'll bring them back. She goes, I'm sorry. I can't rent you these jet skis. It's the rules. I'm like, I'm like, oh, my God. Duck, whack, whack, right? I'm like, let me speak to somebody else. She goes, I'm sorry, sir. They're going to tell you the same things. I said, don't find me somebody else who can't think it can't be done. Find me somebody who just believes it's a possibility. She said, hold on. So she starts walking behind this door, double doors. I said, stop, don't move. She's like, what? I said, don't go behind those double doors. She goes, why? I said, it's a fucking duck pond back there, more ducks. I said, go upstairs and find me an eagle. And anyway, the manager came back, the hotel man, I got my jet skis in a minute or two because she's an eagle. Okay? This is sort of the inner game, how it melds with the outer game of what your own business right now as entrepreneurs. What's your mentality? If you see yourself falling into duck-like mentality, you got to freaking break out of it. So I come up with a system, right, the straight line, okay? And so here's the thing. So here's the idea with influence. Ready? The idea with the straight lines who's read Sun Tzu? Sun Tzu, the Art of War? Every battle's won before it's ever fought, right? So that's the straight line. The idea is before we go into the encounter, before you call up an affiliate, before you make any move to influence, of course, know what your outcome is, but also know the things that you need to accomplish in the other person's mind to get them to say yes. There's only a few things. Notice, to influence somebody, here's what has to line up. There's 3 things. Number one is that they love your product. They have to love the product on both a logical and an emotional level. Logic alone is not enough to close a sale, and without logic, you get buyer's remorse and people cancel. You have to develop a logical, an airtight logical case and an airtight emotional case of why they should love your product. When you read a well-written sales letter, I read them, I'm like, I see exactly. It's very simple. They convince you the product makes sense for you in your own life, and the emotional side of it is that you see yourself using the product in the future and feeling good. It's called future pacing. That must occur. At some point, if you want to close someone, the people buy shit they don't really like. Well, they think they do with buyers. They think they like it emotionally, but they really don't, and they cancel. Well, you get complaints. But this has to line up. The second thing that has to occur, they have to trust and connect with you on unconscious and conscious level, emotionally and logically. They have to connect and trust you. And 3 is trust and connect with your company, who's behind you, whoever's affiliated with you. The idea of the straight line, and it's elementally simple. It takes a little work to master it. Few days, that's it. And then just making some mistakes out there in the beginning, you're still going to increase, like I said, the company, they dramatically increase their close rate. I mean, quick. But once you get elegant at this, it's ridiculous. You can, and ethical sidebar here. I used this, okay, and it was so effective that I took these 19-year-old kids and then made them multimillionaires, and they would get a businessman to send in $4 million for a stock they shouldn't buy. Millions and millions of dollars. Because with the system, when you fully understand the system and can use it, you can get people to buy things they shouldn't buy, to do things they shouldn't do, to take actions they shouldn't take. And I caution you now that I'll give you everything, the keys to the kingdom. But please, for your own sake, is only use this system to influence people that should be influenced. The idea is to have ethics and integrity in what you do, to help people to take actions they should be taking, to overcome obstacles that stop them from taking action, that stop them from making good decisions, using the straight line to help people break down the barriers that stop them from taking good decisions. There are so many people, my mom said to me, don't trust the fill a brush salesman. There's people walking around with a lot worse than that in this world, and they have these limiting beliefs about buying, and because they're there, they don't take action. They live in a fucking box and have nothing in life. They live in poverty, they live in negativity, they live in averageism. They don't live empowered lives. The idea, when you're using this beautifully and elegantly, is to help those people get the things they need by number one, developing these airtight cases of loving the product, trusting you in the trust your company, and get that corralled in a single moment in time. In a single moment in time. I can get you to a level of certainty right now. How many are pretty certain that my system's pretty good? Right. Cool. Tomorrow you won't be certain. Not because of anything I did wrong, or it's less true or not true. All is that as human beings, we fall off a level of certainty. You follow what I'm saying here? You're certain for a second, because it makes perfect sense to you, right? You're certain. It will start to deteriorate just naturally over time. You don't stay as certain about something until it happens again and again and again, and then it becomes a conviction, and you're always certain about it, right? But there's a process of convincing. What happens very often in a situation is you might have created 2 of the 3 tens. When I say the tens, let me say backtrack. In other words, the idea is if 1 is uncertainty and 10 is certainty, if you get someone to a level of certainty that they love it, they're certain they love it, they're certain you're trustworthy and likable, they're certain that your company is going to stand behind it as integrity, if those 3 tens exist in a moment in time, boom, you got an excellent shot of closing them. If you don't close them, there's a reason why. It's because they have a limiting buying belief. So then what we do in the straight line is we know that, because we know before the battle starts, we know what's going on here. We realize if we get someone to a 10, you know how you do it. You'll know when you have them there, because you can hear in their language tones, right? So if you get someone to the 3 tens and they're still not buying, you know it's a buying belief that's holding them back. Or they don't have the money. Get it? Now, the idea with the money, I want to go off topic here, but the idea is to qualify that out earlier on. I'm just giving you the short story here. So they would be out of the system before. In the straight line, you don't pitch people, you don't speak with people who are unqualified, right? So anyway, you get someone to 3 tens and they don't buy, you know, or they don't go for, let's say you're trying to get a deal with an affiliate, right? You're trying to set up an affiliate for your what's your name? Walter. Walter's trying to put an affiliate, right? And he's pitched his heart out to the guy. The guy loves what Walter has to sell. He thinks Walter's going to be a big star in the industry. He knows that in the past, whatever company Walter represents, it's integrity. Everything sounds great, and the guy's still not buying. There's something holding the guy back, and it's typically a buying belief about doing business with someone he doesn't know and not trusting them, having a worse downside than upside. There's something, a belief holding them back. So what we do is once we establish the 3 tens, we then go through a process called looping, and we use very simple language patterns that any 6-year-old, this is so easy, people. It's really easy. You use and it had to be easy because my people were not like super salespeople. You use basic language patterns to loop around to crack people's limiting buying beliefs in the moment, realizing that certainty wanes after a minute or two, and bring them back up to a level of certainty again. When I say loop, you have to loop and go back to develop the 3 tens once more, and then boom, people start to buy. That's the short story here of how you can influence anybody who is closable, to want to be your partner, to want to be in business with you. To start off, number 1, remember, what's the first thing I said? People don't invest their time and money with you, want to be partners with you because you have a goal. What do you need? A vision, right? So this in a vacuum is not as powerful as when you add on the big V into the equation. You become a fucking visionary. And don't tell me, oh, I'm not fuck you are. You're all visionaries. That's what? A reason, right? If you say, I'm not a visionary, that's a load of crap. Every one of you is capable of being a visionary. It's not some little thing that's reserved for the select few. Every one of you is capable of being a visionary. You have to ignite it in yourself. And what happens with a straight line, and I'll tell you what happened with my firm now, is once I taught this to these kids, okay, it ignited a force in them, because when you have this ability, it's almost like it wakes up something inside you, because what changes is not only your ability to influence other people, but to influence who? Yourself. You start feeling completely different about yourself. And these kids went out there and they raised their standards. I would give meetings every single day. And I cracked their limiting beliefs. They would come in, their parents never told them to be rich, right? They thought they'd be working in 7-Eleven, these kids. I would say, the moment you walk through this door and you sit down behind this desk and you say the words I teach you, everything in the past falls off. You become as powerful as the most powerful CEO in America. If you pick up that phone, it's a weapon, you're a terrorist. And then I went wild, okay? And I said some stuff I shouldn't have said. But the point is that the point is I'm a little bit older and wiser now, okay? But what I did is the first thing I did is I cracked their limiting beliefs. And these kids went out there and achieved things, and I inserted what was called a motivation strategy, which I do now more elegantly, and I know what I didn't unconsciously. I showed them how to motivate themselves using anchors like pain and pleasure, and we've all heard of that before, but I took it to a much higher level. I did it at a much higher level, and boom, it worked. Ultimately, the mistake I made was very simple, and I'll tell you what it was. The system was incredibly effective to the point where today it's still used all over Wall Street. Every big firm uses a straight line. If you look at my wall on Facebook, everyone, a straight line, this, the whole thing. I didn't even want to teach it. When I first started going, I taught everything but the straight line because I thought, it's people, they'll commit bad things with it. It's like, it was my own limiting belief. The system's beautiful and elegant. The problem is that I, myself, at the age of 26, became greedy. And that's it. At the heart of my problems, I would like to say it was drugs that made me do things that I went to jail for 22 months because I manipulated some stocks. And I deserve to go to jail for that because I took this unbelievable, beautiful system that it works in any business, and I bastardized it by allowing them to use it to convince people to do shit they shouldn't do. My average income was 50, 60 million a year in my 20s. I could have made 30 million legitimately. 95% of what I did was strictly legit. It was the 5% that took me off the reservation, and I paid the ultimate price for it. The idea is that greed is not good, but the belief that Gordon Gekko inserted in me, my ass, when I saw he's on stage, greed is good. Remember the movie, right? Greed is good. I was like, fuck, greed is good. I thought that was true. It's not. It's ambition that's good. Greed doesn't cut through and clarify anything. Ambition cuts through. Ambition clarifies. To have a vision for a better future, not just for you, for your family, for the people you love. That's what I was missing. So I took the system that I just made as much as I could, as quick as I could, and I paid the price. Ultimately, I'm fortunate. I wrote a book. I got lucky. I wrote this book, and it got picked up all over the world. And DiCaprio's, great. My point is this, okay, is that if you can look at my life in any way, I want you to be able to pick up the great stuff from it, and this stuff which is amazing, but learn from the bad too. Is that when you develop this power, and you really, and you can do this stuff and really use it, only use it to help people get the things they need and to make decisions they should be making. Don't go off the reservation. So real quick here, everyone get a lot of value out of this today? Everyone like it?